and welcome to the Credit You Deserve podcast. In this podcast, we will cover relevant topics that impact your personal finances. You will walk away better informed about the basics of personal finances, with tips and recommendations you can incorporate into your own daily lives. We will also inform you to the latest developments in the financial world and the impact they may have on you. You work hard to take care of your finances. Isn't it time you get the credit you deserve?
Welcome to episode 3 of the Credit You Deserve podcast. In this episode, we're going to be speaking with Trevor Neufeld with Neufeld Capital Management in regards to tips that you can take to save for college, whether you're just had a baby or you have a student who's a year or two away from entering college. So September is college savings month, which I just found out literally a week ago or so. So we thought that the timing for this discussion was very timely, and that it's just good information to have because you can never start too soon to save for college. So Trevor, I'm going to allow you to introduce yourself, if you wouldn't mind just sharing a little bit about your background.
Yeah, so like David said, I'm a financial advisor with Neufeld Capital Management. We're just a block down the road. So we specialize in financial planning for retirement, but obviously a big part of that with people who are, getting close to that. They might have kids that are in college. They might have grandkids that are going to college. So it's a topic that comes up a lot and super important. College is not cheap these days, so you have to have a good plan in place to figure out how to get your kid there successfully and hopefully not drown them in student debt coming out the other side. One thing to keep in mind when we're talking about college savings is it's a lot different story today than it used to be. So I looked up some statistics, and we'll say that the average parent now who has a kid that's getting close to college years, let's say that parent went to school back in 1995. Well, average tuition for a 4-year public school in 1995 was $6,200 a year, roughly. Now, minimum wage in 1995 was $5.15. So fast forward to 2022, and the average tuition for the same thing is just over $27,000, and minimum wage is now $7.25. So minimum wage has went up 41% since 1995, and college tuition has went up 337%. So it's not as easy, as a college student, you're probably not making the big bucks. You don't have your degree yet, you don't have the job of your dreams, so you might be working minimum wage or close to it. And the reality is you'd have to work about 10 times as much to cover the same amount of tuition you were able to back then. So it's not just kids not wanting to work, I would say, but understanding what your kid's walking into, and if college is really important to them and they know what they want to do and they need a degree and they have a plan in place, it's still a huge obstacle to pay it off with today's rates. So we don't see that changing, unfortunately, with the way college is increasing year to year, and got a plan for that.
I think one of the challenges, too, that a lot of young families face is that they point to the higher costs, and I know where we're at in today's society is a lot different than even where we're at in a year or two ago, but just with inflationary, the inflation concerns and whatnot, that just the cost of living has gone up, so it's a lot harder to find those funds to be able to set aside. When you're talking to families, and it's easy to emphasize why it's important to save for college at a younger age. But for the families who are saying, well, I just don't know where that excess money is to be able to set aside, how do you guys help walk through that situation?
Yeah, that's really tough because it just is so expensive. I think a couple of pieces of advice are, one, college shouldn't just be a default. I think there's a lot of friends of mine who went to college, gotten degrees that they weren't really sure where they were going to take them, and ended up getting jobs not to do with their degrees, and have huge student loan debt for a job, for a degree that really isn't pushing anything in their career forward. So there's that, and then there's be aware that tuition changes or varies hugely school to school. So not everyone wants to go to a small community college, but you can save an absolute ton, get a good education there, and ultimately put yourself in a lot better position coming out. So something to consider, and not to think of it as a lesser option either.
Absolutely, and you can never start too soon, as we just discussed with savings. So hopefully, after you listen to this episode, you'll walk away with a few ideas or a few tips, whether again you're looking short term or long term with your plan. So, why is saving for college education important in your mind as a financial planner?
Yeah, it kind of falls in line just like saving for retirement. You can't start too soon, and that's just because of the power of compound interest and investing. And really, when we run college saving plan projections, the default projection rate for each year of inflation for college tuition is 5-6%. So that's, compare that to normal inflation that we've seen over time in general at 2-3%. And that's a really big increase each year. So you need to invest, one, in actual investments that are hedged against inflation, because college inflation is a real thing. And so investing in different plans that we'll talk about today is incredibly important just to sustain the amount that you're putting in, make it worth tomorrow's dollars value for your kids.
Well, and I think it's important, too, to emphasize that as we go through the products that are available, there are a wide range of risks that you can assume. So everyone thinks, okay, well, I got to throw my money into the market, and what happens if the market crashes and I lose all that money for my students' tuition? There are avenues or products out there that are a little bit more risk averse, that maybe it won't grow as much or maybe don't have the upside as much, but at least will still protect that money, maybe provide some other benefits for the taxpayer, but then also allow you to set aside money for that college as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And we really approach, with all investing, when you're looking at the risk and your goals, you're looking at the time frame that you have. So when you're college planning for your kid who's, maybe just was born 1-2 years old, and you have 18 years left before school's going to be an expense, it can be a lot more risky because over time the market's done a lot better. Whereas in like a situation where your kid's 16, 17, you only have a few years, you're not going to want to be as risky, because the last thing you want to do is invest $10,000 and send them away with $7,000 for college.
Right.
But yeah, there's a lot of different options that we use. One of the things most common when we talk about is 529 plan. And there's a lot of reasons why that's become the go-to for college savings. Big things are it's pretty versatile in what you can use it for. They extended it to have some amounts available for K through 12. Obviously, the biggest thing people save for is the secondary education with college. A really high lifetime limit. You can contribute just about as much as you want. The Wisconsin state limit's over $500,000, per person. So that's per beneficiary saving. Gives you a lot of options with that, and you can have multiple people contributing for the same person. So that's the one we see the most common, and yeah, it's been a pretty good tool for a lot of our clients.
With the 529 plan, so if I understand it correctly, that's set up like on the state level, because each state has their own varying product when it comes to the 529 plan. Is that actually set up through the state, or where does someone go to actually establish a 529 plan?
Yeah, there's two different options. You can go directly through the state, and that's going to be the EdVest program. And then you can also go through a broker, a financial advisor, and that's going to be Tomorrow's Scholar. So both pretty similar options. Really, the advantages of going through an advisor are the same as any type of investing planning, is you get help in that area. They'll do projections for you, see where you're at and what realistically would you need to save, based on what your goals are for your kids. So there's online tools for that available to people as well, just in general.
Okay. If someone wanted to look at an alternative option to the 529 or the EdVest plan, what other options are available?
Yeah, so I'll start with the other specifically education savings account, and that's going to be the Coverdell ESA, or previously known as the Educational IRA. So that's going to have the same, we'll talk about the tax benefits of both. This is going to go after tax money, so money that you've received as income, paid tax on it, you invest it in there, and then it grows, and the growth in there is going to be tax deferred, and when you take it out, it's tax free. So that's the benefit of both of those plans. The reasons people have moved away from the Coverdell is that there's a limit of $2,000 per year. So obviously you're not going to be able to save near as much. There's some more restrictions with the age limits of it too. You can't contribute after the beneficiary of the account is 18. Once they're 30, you either have to liquidate the account or roll it over to another eligible beneficiary in your family. So in general, we're going to move towards the 529. That's just the best for most people.
Okay.
There's also no income limit for the 529, so it doesn't matter what you make, you can contribute to that. And the final thing, the only advantage of the Coverdell is that you can invest in whatever you want. Whereas you said before, the 529 is a state-sponsored plan, so it has a limited investment menu that you can choose from. But there's still good options in there really to accomplish anything you want to do in these accounts.
Okay, that's good to know. We do offer Coverdell IRAs here at the credit union, but to your point, they're used very sparingly, and we haven't had a lot of interest in it. And I think people are looking at like the 529s and working with other parties for that. But just so people are aware that we do have that option in house here as well. So I know that with some of these plans, because they have tax benefits, if you will, for the taxpayer, there are also some restrictions maybe on the back end with the plan, as far as you had mentioned that maybe the restriction on how the funds are used, or if they aren't used for like the beneficiary that you've identified. There's some restrictions as far as who they can roll down to, if they can roll down to. Are there any concerns, from the financial planning that you hear commonly from, whether it's a grandparent or a parent investing in these for the first time where, after a few years they're like, oh, I wish I would have known this about the plan or something like that?
Yeah, I would say the biggest conversation piece we have is, the kid's younger, or maybe they're even older and they just haven't decided, like, are they going to go to college? So we'll talk about some of the other options if you're unsure about that in the conversations that we have. And one of the things I would say is you are restricted with these, so you want to use them for college tuition, room and board, things like that. There's a list, and you can look it up online, of the exact expenses that are covered under this that make it tax-free on the withdrawal. So, one thing we talk about is if someone has 5 kids, they're able to roll that over to other kids. So you don't just have to bank on each individual kid going to college. So you have some flexibility with that. Now, if you have 1 or 2 kids and you're not sure if either are going to college, but you do want to put something away for them to give them, some money for maybe other programs that they might use that might not be covered under either of those accounts, some of the options that we look at are an UTMA. So that's going to be a non-qualified account. There's no tax benefit going in or out, but that child is going to have the option to use that for whatever they want. And the way an UTMA works, for people who aren't familiar with it, it's going to be in the parent's name until the kid reaches age 21 in Wisconsin. And then you can transfer it into the kid's name and it becomes theirs to use. But prior to that, the parent's going to have control to it. Okay. So it's a good thing, if you don't want your 5-year-old to have $10,000 at their disposal, you only want so many toys around the house type of thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's one of the tools. A couple other options that we, just let people know that are available is people can use a Roth IRA. So this is going to probably be definitely after their kid has earned income. But they can open up a Roth IRA in their kid's name. And even if the kid's earning income, so they're only going to be contribute up to either $6,000 or whatever that child's income was. But that kid doesn't have to put that money specifically towards the Roth. So they can make $5,000 on their own, the parent, and they can spend it however they want, but the parent can now put $5,000 into an IRA on their behalf. Now, that IRA has limits on the earnings, but they're able to take those the contributions that they put in, and use towards college. So it's a way to kickstart your kid's retirement. They have a retirement plan that has its limitations, but the principal is an option available to them for college planning or other type of expenses that they might have coming up.
Yeah, the Roth IRA, not to dovetail this conversation, but that's a interesting tool just in the grand scheme of retirement planning because it is very versatile, at the end of the day, and allows you to use it for various options, with some stipulations, of course. I should clarify that. And I think just to clarify too, we keep we keep speaking about college, but are trade schools included in a lot of these plans as well, like a 2-year technical college, or is it really just geared more for like the 4-year programs?
So yeah, they recently expanded the flexibility of the 529 as well. But it's not just the 4-year program, and there's even availability for registered apprenticeship programs, up to, I believe it's a $10,000 limit from your 529. So you do have other options with that as well.
Okay, that's good to know.
So one thing that some people aren't aware of is that every 529 plan each state has their own. And so if you have access to any state's 529 plan, but if you use Wisconsin's, you actually do have the contributions tax deductible up to around $3,800. So that's a benefit that people aren't always aware of. So that's a state tax deduction, not a federal one. But I can give you a little tax deduction in that area.
Sure. I guess logistically speaking, so like with the 529 plan specifically, because it's, like if you establish it to the state of Wisconsin, how does it work if your student decides to go to college out of the state? Does it matter that they, maybe are going to go to Minnesota or Illinois or somewhere else, or do they have to actually stay within the state to be able to use the funds that are in a 529?
Yeah, good question. And no, it doesn't matter. They can go to any state they want. There's even some abroad that you can use this for. So you're totally not restricted in that area.
Is it, the other question I have is, do you have to establish the 529 plan where the child's physically located? Or is it, so like, if my parents wanted to set up a 529 plan for my nephew, but my nephew is in another state, would my parents set it up in the state of Wisconsin because that's where they live? Or would they set it up in the state in which like my nephew were to live?
Yeah, because it doesn't matter which state that the child's going to go to college in, I would set it up in the state that you live because that's the state you're probably paying state taxes in.
Okay.
So if that state has a deduction for your contributions, then you get that benefit. Whereas you did it in a different state's plan, you wouldn't have that. So that would be my recommendation in that area.
Okay, perfect. So besides using a Roth IRA as a potential instrument for pulling out some of those principal contributions, What are your recommendations for parents who maybe have an established retirement plan, whether it's a 401k, a 403b, or maybe a traditional IRA established elsewhere, or they have a lot of their proceeds set up in those types of funds? What is your typical advice to a parent who's maybe considering going that avenue as opposed to some of these other ones?
Yeah, run into that every once in a while. A parent really wants to help out their kid, and that's awesome. One of the things that you want to make sure is that your retirement is secured before you're paying for your kid's college. And the reason being is, any kid, I think they'd rather have their own tuition, student loans, than have to support you throughout your retirement. So we want to make sure that you're in a good spot. And, hopefully if you put yourself in a good spot, you can pay for your kids, help them out down the road, help your grandkids out down the road, and honestly see a better turnout in that area. So that's typically what we'd recommend. If people are in a position where they're able to do it financially and say they're still working, rather than take out of their current plans, what I'd say is lower your contributions and then cash flow help your kids, because you don't want to pull out of the plans. There's typically penalties, possibly taxes. So just lowering your contributions will give you that extra cash to just help them along the way.
And I would suspect that like with a 401k or a 403b, taking a loan out against your plan probably is not a recommended avenue either, right?
For college. Yeah, you're just changing loans at that point. So one typically give that advice.
So we've highlighted some of the plans that are available to families if they want to start investing early for their children or their grandchildren. But what other options are available to families that want to supplement some of these savings plans to actually pay for college?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, a big thing is, one, fill out your FAFSA every year. That's the free application for federal aid. So it's a free application, and it can be really helpful. It's going to be dependent on the assets and income that your family has available to you, and that gets kind of into complicated formulas, but there's no harm in doing that. So that's one thing. The second thing, and everyone knows about these, but scholarships. So scholarships are time-consuming. They're not the most fun. It's kind of extra voluntary homework. But, I did a little math just to kind of maybe give some kids and even parents some motivation to have their kids do scholarships. So if your kid spent 100 hours and they did 25 scholarships, so each scholarship took 4 hours on average, and out of those 25 scholarships, they got 2 accepted and they were rewarded 2 prizes for $5,000. So it doesn't seem terribly unrealistic. They spent 100 hours, not a huge percentage of them got accepted, and that's part of the reality of it. But for that $100, and they got $5,000, that's the equivalent of getting paid $50 an hour tax-free. So if you're 17 and you're making $50 an hour tax-free, you're pretty happy about that.
Right.
So it's a good thing to keep in mind when you're thinking about, working and saving up money, doing an actual job for college, and the payoff that can be there with scholarships as well. So definitely recommend you put in the time. And there's also one thing to look into is what scholarships might I be applicable for or qualify for that not everyone does. It gives you a little edge. You're not fighting against the entire population of the human race of 17-year-olds, and you can get a better chance at getting those scholarships.
Well, speaking of scholarships as well, so the credit union over the last year or two has made a devotion to some of the local tech colleges as an alternative to going to a 4-year program to be able to help supplement some of those opportunities that students may have that are going through any healthcare-related fields at the tech level. So through NTC up in Wausau, and then also through Mid-State Technical College here in the Marshfield area, we've put together some funds that are available to any of the students who are going through any of those healthcare programs as well. And so we would encourage you to reach out to your financial planner, even on the college level or at the school, to be able to see, how to get qualified for those opportunities as well. I know when I was in high school too, an option that was available to me, and I know in our areas available at high school as well, is the advanced placement courses, because it allows you to take a higher level course, and then there's a test that's attributed to the end, and if you pass that test, then you actually earn free college credit as well. So when I went into my first year of college, I already had, I think there was 13 credits, so my first semester was almost taken care of just because of those free credits that I was able to take advantage of in high school. So sometimes there's options like that as well.
Yeah, that can be huge. And Marshfield has a great AP program. So yeah, I know plenty of people who went into college as a sophomore and a half coming out of my grade just because of how much that program expanded and having the right credits. So it's a super huge thing to do when you're looking at your schedule going into junior, senior year, is how much money can I save, and figuring out what classes are going to be beneficial for you to have off your transcript in college.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think during today's episode here, we discussed some of the options that are available from a savings tool, or tools that are available for savings and investing, whether your child is just born or is getting close to college age. But then we also talked about some of those areas in which they can supplement their college savings as well. And so while there's a lot of information that's available out on the internet or social media or wherever you find your latest news, ultimately we would recommend to anyone who's really serious about developing a strategy for saving for college to sit down with a financial planner, whether it is Trevor and the group over at Neufeld Capital or maybe a local planner as well. But really sit down, bring all the information that you have as far as your current situation or financial situation and kind of what your goals are with this, and really develop a strategy, because this is one of those things where if you start early and you do it the right way, you may be able to save your child from having to endure some of the hardships that come with having huge student loan debt and some of the ramifications that we've seen over the last 10 to 15 years, from kids going to school. So,
yeah, absolutely. I mean, we love to help people out with this. It's an important thing for families that want to do this and that are able to do this. There's things that you can do right and really maximize the money that you're putting in. Make sure that you're getting the most out of it, so it'll help your kids get off on the right path. So, we do it at Neufeld Capital Management. We help people with their 529s all the time, walk them through the different options that we discussed today and figuring out which one makes the most sense for them and is best for their family and their kids too.
Awesome. Well, Trevor, appreciate the time this morning to discuss this. And again, if you have any other questions on any of these plans, please don't hesitate to reach out to the credit union and we can get you in touch with Trevor and his team over there, or whoever would be local with you. So thank you.
Yeah, no, appreciate it. I had a good time with this. That's great.